Please, don't call the police." The words hung in the air as Graham Cole stood at the rusted gate of the small house he hadn't seen in 15 years. He was 42 now, sharp suit, expensive watch, one of the most successful developers in the region. But this place, this was the past he'd buried. He'd come back for one reason: sell the property sign, the deal, turn old memories into new money. Then the front door cracked open. A woman stepped out, eyes wide, shoulders tense like she was bracing for a blow. Behind her, a little boy clung to her, and a girl peeked from behind a worn skirt. The woman swallowed hard. "I can explain," she whispered. Her name was Aisha Bennett. She told Graham the house looked abandoned, and she and the kids had nowhere else to go. 3 months, she admitted, living quietly, keeping the place clean, trying not to be seen. Graham walked inside and froze. The dusty ruin, he remembered, had become a fragile kind of home, blankets, folded pots, neatly stacked, a thin line of laundry drying in the sun. He should have ended it right there. 1 week, he said, that's all. But 2 days later, he came back then again. The children started trusting him. Aisha never begged, never played helpless. When Graham learned she was hiding from family who wanted to force her into marriage to settle debts, something in him snapped awake, an old, fierce instinct to protect. And for the first time in years, Graham realized the house wasn't just property. It was a second chance for all of them. 2 days later, Graham told himself he was only coming back to check the place. But the moment he parked on the cracked driveway, his excuse felt thin as paper. In the yard, Aisha was pinning laundry to a rope, strung between 2 posts, her hands moving with steady, practiced care. The same faded dress, only now it was washed, pressed, almost proud. Nearby, the little boy pushed a tin car through the dirt, making engine sounds with his lips, while the girl cradled a rag doll stitched from scraps. Aisha turned, startled, and her eyes widened like she'd been caught doing something wrong. "Mr. Cole, did something happen?" "No," Graham said too quickly. His throat tightened. "I just wanted to see how things were going." She hesitated, then stepped aside. "I made coffee." Inside the house didn't smell like abandonment anymore. It smelled like warm bread and cheap soap. Sunlight spilled through open windows. Wildflowers sat in old cans along the sill, small bursts of color against peeling paint. In the corner, the girl had a little school spot, a wobbly table, stacked books, a pencil worn down to a stub. Graham's fingers brushed the spine of one book and he froze. The Little Prince. His chest hollowed out. He opened it, and there it was, his own childhood handwriting on the first page, uneven and earnest. Aisha noticed and went pale. I didn't know. If it's yours, she can give it back." The girl stepped forward, wary but curious, watching Graham's face like she was reading him the way she read those pages. Graham swallowed, then forced a softer voice. "No, she can keep it." The girl's shoulders loosened. Aisha exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for months. "And listen, if you're watching this unfold with me, you already know what he knew in that moment. This wasn't just a house anymore. It was a heartbeat. And the past he'd been running from was standing right in front of him, asking quietly, bravely, to be seen." Graham tried to play it cool after that, like letting the girl keep the book was no big deal. But the way Aisha's chin trembled for half a second told him it was a big deal. She set the coffee down with both hands, careful, like the cup might betray her. "She loves reading," Aisha said quietly. "I teach her what I can." Graham nodded toward the little corner with the wobbly table. "You're doing all this by yourself?" Aisha's mouth tightened, not defensive, determined. "I have to." She glanced at the kids, and something fierce flickered behind her eyes. "Those aren't my children. They're my brother and sister." Then softer, "They're all I've got." The girl stepped forward, still cautious. "I'm Lily," she said, voice small but steady. The boy toddled up right behind her, shoving a tin truck toward Graham like it was an offering. "Jamal," he announced, and then without warning smiled, as if Graham had always belonged there. Graham stared at the toy in his palm. It was dented homemade, held together by stubbornness. He knelt down anyway, suit pants creasing against the old floorboards. Jamal pushed the truck across Graham's knee, making engine sounds. Graham copied him awkward at first, then smoother, like muscle memory he didn't know he had. From the kitchen doorway, Aisha watched them with her arms crossed, trying to hide the softness in her face. Lily blurted, "Aisha stays up all night sewing. She gets tired." Aisha shot her a look, half scolding, half love, and Graham finally noticed the dry cracks on her hands, the faint shadows under her eyes. "Are you eating okay?" he asked before he could stop himself. Aisha straightened, pride snapping into place. "We don't need charity, Mr. Cole. We needed a roof, that's all." Graham lifted his hands, palms open. "I didn't mean it like that." His voice dropped. I know what it's like to stretch a meal." And right there watching Jamal roll that tin truck like it was the most precious thing in the world, Graham felt something shift inside him. Not pity, not guilt. Something warmer. Something dangerous. "And if you're still with me, you can probably feel it too. This isn't about a house anymore. It's about a man who thought he'd outgrown his past. Realizing his past just found him again on its knees playing on the floor. That evening, the light outside turned honey-colored, spilling across the porch, like it was trying to soften every hard edge in the world. Graham sat on the top step, elbows on his knees, listening to Jamal's toy truck rattle over the wood. Inside, Lily's quiet voice floated through the screen door as she sounded out words from The Little Prince, pausing to breathe, then pushing through again, stubborn and brave. Graham cleared his throat. "Can I ask you something, Aisha?" She didn't look at him right away. She was folding a small shirt with careful, precise creases, like order was the only thing she could control. "You already are," she said, but there was no bite in it, just tired honesty. "Why this house?" Graham asked. "Why here?" Aisha's fingers stopped mid-fold. Her shoulders rose with a slow inhale, then fell like she'd made a decision. "A woman at the corner store told me about it," she said quietly. "She said it had been empty for years, but that it used to be a place where people got help. That the woman who lived here, she didn't have much, but she still shared." Graham's jaw tightened. He stared out at the yard so Aisha wouldn't see his eyes change. His mother's face flashed in his mind, hands rough from work, smile, gentle, anyway, always saving a little food for someone worse off. Aisha's voice dropped. "I needed somewhere safe." Safe from what Graham asked, though something in his gut already knew. Aisha turned toward him then, and for a second the porch felt smaller, the air heavier. "My family," she said. "They tried to marry me off to settle debts. A man I'd barely met. They said it would fix everything." Her laugh came out sharp and bitter like a cracked bell. "When I refused, they said I was ungrateful, that I was ruining the family." Graham felt his hands curl into fists on his knees. "You're an adult," he said, voice low. "No one can force you." Aisha's eyes flicked toward the door, toward Lily and Jamal, then back to Graham. "You don't understand," she whispered. "Where I'm from, when family decides something they don't ask, they take. And when I said I was taking the kids with me," her throat worked. "They told me it would be better if I disappeared for good." Silence stretched between them, broken only by Jamal's tiny engine noises and the steady rhythm of Lily reading inside. Graham swallowed hard. "So you ran," he said. "I ran," Aisha confirmed, chin-lifting, "and I'd do it again. And right here, if you're sitting at home listening to this, maybe with your own memories close to the surface, you can feel the moment the story stops being about an old house. It becomes about a line in the sand." Graham's voice softened, but his posture didn't. "No one's going to take you from here," he said. "Not you. Not those kids. Not while I'm standing." The next morning, Graham didn't go to the office. He sat in his car outside the courthouse with his phone pressed to his ear knuckles, white around the steering wheel. "I need to know what I can do to protect her," he told his attorney, Marion Knox. Not next week, not we'll see. Today. There was a pause on the line, paper shuffling the quiet weight of someone taking him seriously. If she's being coerced, Marion said, we document everything. We can file for a protective order. And if a man is threatening her, especially involving kids, that's not a family matter. That's criminal. Graham exhaled slow and sharp, like he'd been holding his breath for years. That afternoon, Aisha's voice came through a public phone, thin with panic. He's here, Graham. The man they promised me to. He's asking around. He said I'm coming back whether I want to or not. Graham didn't even answer with words at first, just the sound of his car door slamming, gravel spitting under tires. When he reached the house, Aisha was in the living room with Jamal on her lap, Lily glued to her side like a shadow. The windows were shut, curtains drawn, the reminder of safety suddenly feeling like a lie. He knocked, Aisha whispered. He yelled my name. Graham crouched in front of them, lowering his voice the way you do when you don't want fear to spread. You're staying here. Door's locked. I'm handling it. Aisha searched his face. Really searched it, like she was deciding whether hope was a trap. Then she nodded once, tight and trembling. Graham found the man that evening at the only bar in town, loud enough to make sure everyone heard him. Daryl Sutter was thick-necked, confident, the kind of guy who looked like he'd never been told no, and lived to punish anyone who tried. You Daryl Sutter? Graham asked, stopping at his table. Daryl leaned back, smirking. Depends who's asking. Graham slid a business card onto the sticky wood. Daryl's eyes dropped to the name, and froze just slightly like a predator, realizing the other animal has teeth. I'm not here to negotiate romance, Graham said, calm as ice. Aisha Bennett isn't property. What you're doing is illegal. If you go near her again, if you even ask someone where she is, I will involve law enforcement. Daryl scoffed, but it didn't land. Her family owes me 15 grand. I'm collecting. Graham didn't blink. He pulled out a checkbook and wrote with slow, deliberate strokes. Then he placed the check down beside a second piece of paper, Marion's document, crisp and final. You take the money, Graham said, tapping the page, and you sign this. You release any claim, any contact, any deal anyone promised you, and then you disappear. Daryl stared at the amount like it was a miracle he didn't deserve. His pen scratched the paper. When Graham walked back into that old house later, Aisha stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. Her breath hitched when he told her it was done, really done. She didn't thank him with fancy words. She just covered her mouth with her hand and cried quiet, shaking tears of relief while Lily wrapped her arms around her waist and Jamal climbed into Graham's lap like the world had finally stopped chasing them. And in that moment, Graham understood something he couldn't unlearn. This wasn't charity. This was protection. This was family beginning to happen right in the place he once swore he'd never come back to. In the days after Daryl Sutter vanished from town, the house exhaled. It wasn't dramatic. No fireworks, no victory speech. Just little signs that fear had finally loosened its grip. Aisha stopped flinching at every car door that slammed outside. She sang under her breath while stirring a pot on the stove, the melody soft and careful at first, then steadier, like she was testing whether peace would stay. Lily read at the table with her knees tucked up, tracing lines with one finger. Jamal chased sunlight across the floorboards, giggling when the dust in the air turned into glitter. And Graham kept showing up. Morning, he'd knock lightly, never pounding, never taking space he hadn't earned. I'm heading out, he'd say, holding up a paper bag like it was evidence. Brought eggs and coffee. Nothing fancy. Aisha would narrow her eyes, half amused, half suspicious. You eat breakfast now, she'd ask. He'd shrug, trying to sound casual. Apparently I do. At night, he'd returned again, sleeves rolled up, tie gone, sitting on the porch steps, while Lily explained a new word she'd learned, and Jamal insisted Graham watch his fastest truck ever. The man who used to measure time in meetings and contracts now measured it in small voices and scraped knees, and the way Aisha's laugh surprised her, like she wasn't used to hearing it. One evening, as cicadas buzzed in the dark and the porch light hummed, Aisha asked the question like she'd been holding it back for days. You don't have your own family? she said, not accusing, just curious. Graham stared out at the yard at the shadow of the old swing set. No, he admitted. Never married. Never got it right. Why, Aisha's voice stayed gentle, but it didn't let him hide. He swallowed. I told myself love was a luxury, like something you buy after you've secured everything else. He let out a short breath. Turns out you can secure everything and still feel empty. Aisha didn't rush to comfort him. She just nodded, remembers things deeply style, like someone who's lived through nights that didn't end. Life does that, she said. You plan one thing and life insists on another. Graham looked at her, then really looked. Not the tired dress or the calloused hands, but the way she stood in the doorway with Jamal leaning against her hip and Lily's book tucked under her arm like a promise. Aisha wasn't asking for saving. She was building something brick by brick inside a broken place. And if you're watching this with me, you already know what's coming because it's always the quiet moments that change everything. Graham felt it land in his chest, warm and undeniable. He wasn't just visiting anymore. He was coming home. The decision didn't arrive with thunder. It arrived on a Tuesday in a glass-walled conference room that smelled like copier toner and burnt coffee when Graham Cole looked at a set of plans on the table and realized he felt absolutely nothing. No thrill, no hunger, just a hollow quiet. Graham, his partner Ethan Price, snapped, tapping the contract with a sharp fingernail. This deal is worth $2 million. $2 million. You told me that property was dead weight. Graham's gaze didn't move from the paper. His jaw flexed once. It was he said. Ethan leaned forward, voice dropping like a warning. So what changed? Graham finally looked up. The room lights reflected off Ethan's polished watch, off the clean edges of the world Graham used to worship. The memories changed, Graham said, steady as a door locking. I'm not selling. Ethan let out a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. This is about that woman and those kids, isn't it? You're getting emotionally involved with strangers. Graham stood slow and controlled, smoothing his suit coat like he was buying himself time not to explode. They're not strangers, he said quietly. Not anymore. He drove straight to the house after that, the steering wheel warm under his palms, the late afternoon sun low and blinding. When he stepped inside, Aisha Bennett was at the old sewing machine foot, pumping the pedal needle, flashing up and down like a heartbeat. She paused when she saw his face. What happened? She asked, already bracing. Graham didn't dance around it. I canceled the sale. The machine went still. Aisha's hands froze on the fabric. In the corner, Lily lifted her head from her book, and Jamal stopped rolling his truck like even he could feel the air change. Aisha blinked once. Twice. Graham. Why? Her voice wasn't greedy. It was careful, like she was afraid hope might break if she held it too tightly. He swallowed. Because I walked in here and saw life. He said, eyes flicking toward Lily's little reading spot, Jamal's toys, the soup simmering on the stove. And I realized this place still knows how to be a home. Aisha stood slowly, the chair scraping behind her. And what does that mean for us? She asked, barely above a whisper. It means, Graham said, breath-catching. You don't have to count days anymore. You can stay if you want to, as long as you need. That night, after Jamal's soft snores filled the hallway, and Lily's bedroom light finally clicked off, Graham and Aisha sat on the porch under a sky crowded with stars. The wood beneath them creaked with every shift of weight, like the house was listening. I'm scared, Aisha admitted, staring at her hands. Of dreaming too much. Graham turned toward her. Look at me, he said, gentle but firm. She did. And if you've ever lived long enough to know the difference between a fling and a turning point, you'll recognize it right there in the silence, in the way their breathing slowed to match. This isn't pity, Graham murmured. I don't even know what to call it yet. I just know. I don't want a life that doesn't have you in it. Aisha's eyes shone, but she didn't run. She leaned in like she was choosing courage again. And when they kissed, it wasn't fireworks. It was relief. It was two tired souls, finally letting themselves believe they were allowed to be happy. A few months later, the house didn't just look different, it sounded different. Hammers tapped where silence used to live. Fresh paint brightened the hallway, but Graham kept the old porch swing, the one that creaked like an old friend. He built Lily a real desk by the window, and when she ran her fingers over the smooth wood, her lips parted like she didn't trust good things to be permanent. Jamal got a bedroom of his own, 2 walls, the color of soft sky, because Graham said every kid deserves a place that feels like theirs. Aisha fought him on one thing. "I'm not quitting work," she said, hands planted on her hips, chin lifted. "I'm not asking you to, Graham," answered, voice steady. "I'm asking you to stop breaking yourself just to survive." So he turned the old storage room into a sewing studio. Bright, light, sturdy table shelves for fabric. And the first time Aisha walked in, she covered her mouth like she'd been punched by kindness. She started taking small orders, then more. Soon her calendar filled up not with desperation, but with choice. The proposal happened in the least glamorous moment, standing at the sink, sleeves rolled up, soap bubbles climbing their wrists. "Marry me," Graham said, like the words had been waiting behind his teeth for weeks. Aisha froze, plate dripping in her hands. "Graham, I want it all," he said, breath shaking. "You, the kids, a real family, and I want to adopt Lily and Jamal officially. I want them to carry my last name because I already carry them in my heart." Aisha's tears fell fast, quiet, unstoppable, and when she whispered, yes, it didn't feel like the end of a struggle. It felt like the beginning of a life that finally belonged to them. Sometimes the greatest turning point in life isn't a paycheck or a promotion. It's the moment you choose people over pride, compassion over convenience, and love over fear. Especially for those of us who've lived long enough to know, regret has a long memory. It's never too late to come back to what matters. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Do you think Graham made the right choice, canceling the sale and protecting Aisha and the kids? Where are you watching from today? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all. And if you want more stories that hit the heart, and remind us what family really means, like the video, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one.